Hello, hello. I'm back with my round 6 game from the 2025 Maia Open, my most recent open tournament that I played last month in August. So going into this game, I had just won in round 5, so I had 3 out of 5 points. And I've actually been having a kind of interesting tournament where I won all 3 games with white and so far lost both games with black, playing down in every round. So I was desperately trying to break the cycle and ideally win a game as black so I could somewhat salvage the tournament. So for this round, I was paired against WIM Maria Fernandez from Argentina, who's rated around 2163 FIDE. And yeah, actually, I felt pretty nervous about this game because I played Maria in the Blitz event right before the tournament on the boat. We played this crazy boat Blitz thing, and I lost to her in the final round with reverse color. So I played white in that game and lost. So I knew, of course, that she is very strong and dangerous. And looking at her games also during the preparation, I realized that this could be a really, really complicated battle. The interesting thing is that, okay, she was playing white in this game. She's a d4 player, but I also checked her repertoire as black, and I saw that she plays the King's Indian as well. So basically, it's two King's Indian players fighting against each other in the King's Indian. Fireworks are essentially kind of guaranteed. So d6, and here she played h3. So this is, of course, one of the main systems nowadays, and I think this was part of her repertoire, so I believe I was expecting this for the game, and I played e5. So e5 is one of the more common moves nowadays. Of course, black can also castle here, and I've played with knight bd7. e5 is interesting because it forces white to kind of clarify the situation in the center. The endgame after de5, queen d8, king d8, there's been a bunch of games like this, and for the most part, black seems to be okay. So critical for white is to push d5, because otherwise black will take on d4, and white will get an open structure, which is not what they want when they play the h3 system. Generally, white is looking for a closed position so that they can build an attack on the king side. Okay, so a5, g4, knight a6, and knight ge2. And white has different ways to play this one. Personally, I feel like g4 here is kind of early for white, but okay, it leads to just a really complex position. White has a lot of choices. White can develop the bishop to e3, to g5. White can put the knight on f3, or think about knight e2 and then knight g3 after a future g4. So there's a lot of different move orders here. But yeah, g4 I feel like is a bit early because knight a6, knight e2, and here black can already play h5 and force white to block up the king side, which I think is not what white is looking for in this position. Black has other options too, like knight d7 here is quite an interesting move with the idea to play bishop f6, bishop to g5. And if black is able to trade off the dark square bishops, and generally black is very, very happy in this kind of position. So yeah, I feel like this is already kind of what I was hoping for as black. So now white played g5, and I went knight d7. Actually, knight h7 is also interesting, with the idea that if white plays rook to g1, for example, black is looking to play f6. It feels like we can't play f6, but okay, Compi always finds stuff. It turns out that you can play f6, bishop f6, leave this pawn hanging, and go knight g5, followed by king f7, and white is going to have to give up the exchange here. So because of that, knight h7 is interesting. Because it might be just a better way to fight for the king side, as eventually the knight can start using the g5 square. These structures really unusual, where black is like kind of trying to play f6, even though white is the one that's looking to open the king side here. Black also wants to open the king side because we can get some activity on the f file. So I went knight d7. This is also reasonable. The knight comes to c5, where it's pretty well placed, and then this knight at some point gets transferred like via c7 or yeah, replaces the knight on c5, which sometimes gets traded off. So bishop e3, I went knight c5, queen d2, castles. I think at this point we have a lot of different moves both sides can make, as the position is pretty locked up. Here white went knight c1. Knight c1 I think is always kind of a reasonable idea because white is kind of lacking a future for this knight. Like on g3 doesn't really do a whole lot unless white wants to sacrifice it, which is not easy to achieve. So knight c1 followed by knight d3 seems to make sense, and this also allows black to trade off one of their knights too. So I feel like it's kind of okay. So here I played f6. I think this is reasonable. Knight d3. I took on g5, knight c5, knight c5, and now bishop takes g5. And here I went bishop f6. In general, I think it's in black's favor to trade the dark square bishop, so I'd be kind of happy to see this. I feel like white has a lot of weaknesses. So white just pulled back with bishop to e3. But yeah, maybe actually I could have played queen e8. This might have been a more precise way to do things, because I keep the rook kind of open on the f file, and now it's hard for white to both play bishop e2 and castle queenside without defending the pawn. So white will have to kind of spend some time with a move like rook h2 or bringing the bishop back, and so this might be a better version for black, because black is now, I would say, kind of trying to slowly build up on the king side, maybe build up on the f file. I would love to get bishop h6 in if possible, again to trade the dark square bishops, and yeah, that would be kind of the plan. And in the meantime, white is just trying to castle and bring some rooks to the g file, where of course I have a target on g6. Okay, so I played bishop f6, bishop e3, bishop d7, castles. I pushed a4. Generally, a4 is supposed to be useful in these kinds of positions. Sometimes black throws a3 in, starts to mess with white's king a bit. Here, I don't know if it was the most useful move. Maybe I should have just focused on the king side play and made my useful moves here, like king h7, bishop can come to h4, rook f7, queen f8. I can also consider bishop g7, bishop h6, and slowly try to kind of squeeze the position. And yeah, if everything goes according to plan, I think black can get a really, really nice advantage here. If you imagine both rooks doubled up on the f file, we traded off the dark square bishops, the f pawn starts to become a huge target. But okay, things are really so easy. So I pushed a4, king b1, king h7, now rook h2, kind of like multi-purpose move, defending the pawn and preparing to eventually double on the g file. I went rook f7, bishop e2, and now queen c8. So queen c8, super naive move, I have to say, on my end, because I thought I'm attacking the pawn, simply put. But even if it was my turn here, this is not a pawn that I would want to take, because white just can build up rook to g1, queen d1, rook to g3. Their sacrifice is looming on h5. Basically, I'm just asking to get checkmated if I take this pawn. So yeah, this was a really, really bad move on my end. I spent 5 minutes on it, so definitely could have spent more time. Yeah, I was just thinking like, okay, white is going to have to defend the pawn somehow, like h4, bishop f1, rook h1, like one of these moves. But of course, white is just going to sacrifice the pawn and can do so without even, yeah, anything special. So white played rook g1 here pretty quickly. And yeah, now I realized, of course, I can't take the pawn. Rook to g3 is coming. And then bishop takes h5, and that's just disaster for black. And so with this move, queen c8, I really lose a lot of time. So of course I should have brought the queen over, for example, to f8. And then one idea is to put the bishop on h4. The rook can go to f6, queen e7, eventually bring the other rook to g8, and slowly black can kind of mobilize the pieces. And so as long as I don't allow any accidents on g6 or h5, basically black should be all right here. Maybe at some point I can try to put pressure. So yeah, queen c8, rook to g1, and now I realize like I'm on the back foot, and I might have just cost myself like 2 full moves in the position, which is kind of catastrophic. So now I went rook to g7, and after some, actually not much thought, white plays queen to d1 here, I guess looking to possibly sacrifice on h5. But white had a much stronger idea in just bishop h6, which I really didn't realize was so annoying during the game. Rook g8, and now rook to g2, and looking to take on h5. And okay, black can take on h3 here, but I think even rook to g3 and bishop takes h5 is still looming. And yeah, basically black's king is getting wrecked here. So I think we both kind of underestimated white's chances there with bishop h6. So queen d1 kind of gives me a little bit more time. So now I kind of correct my mistake. I bring the queen back, bishop to c1, queen f7, and here I'm able to start consolidating because white isn't able to create any kind of winning attack right off the bat. Actually, the computer pointed out a very interesting move around here. Yeah, it was bishop g4. which I can tell you did not consider during the game. With the positional concept of trading the light square bishops, generally something that's in white's favor here, but of course with the tactical idea that if black accepts the piece, white opens the g file, the h file, goes g5, bishop e7, rook h1, and essentially black is getting checkmated here, and yeah, has to start giving up a lot of material. So that was a very cool one. I definitely didn't consider bishop to g4. Basically with the idea just to trade, like black doesn't have to take the piece. So really the point is just to trade off the light square bishop, which is a very important piece from black's point of view. But anyways, bishop c1 played, and I realized white's idea is to play queen d2, queen h6, but I found that I'm in time if I just bring the queen d2, and now this nice move rook h8. Where queen h6 check just doesn't lead anywhere. After king to g8, the queen is forced to pull back. And now I felt like I'm really kind of holding this position. So here white goes h4. I go king g8, queen e3, king f8. I start shuffling. I did have vague ideas of bringing the king over to the queen side, actually, where I thought it might be safer. Kind of a classic maneuver, like Capablanca style. And eventually try to break on the king side with g5. But somehow this never materialized. White went bishop f1, I went queen e7, queen g3, rook h7, finally connecting the rooks, I think for the first time in the game, although on the 7th rank. But here, yeah, I definitely felt solid, bishop e3, and now went bishop e8. So yeah, I think for some reason I feel like king e8, king d8 is kind of going to be a little bit too much, or yeah, a little bit more risky than I would have wanted. I'm not sure exactly what I was so afraid of as to why, because I did during the game want to move the king over, but for some reason I just I abandoned the plan, but I'm not really sure why. Maybe it was bishop h3. Maybe that's why I played bishop e8, actually to get out of bishop h3, where I'd be forced to trade off the bishops. So with bishop e8 play, now, okay, yeah, of course it becomes harder to bring the king over. So rook h1, now I start sliding the king this way, king h8, rook to g3, we're both kind of maneuvering, it's move 32, and I still have more time, the opponent has about 12 minutes, I have 30, but yeah, we still have to make 8 more moves before the time control. And yeah, here after king to h8, I don't know if I had a huge plan in mind, but maybe I was already intending to push g5, and after rook g3 I decided now actually it is the right time to break with g5, as white feels a little bit discoordinated. And yeah, here I started feeling actually quite optimistic because I felt like my pieces are well placed. Bishop covers h5, so white takes, bishop takes g5. I'm finally able to trade off the dark square bishops, which I've been wanting to do. So takes, rook takes, and now white played bishop h3. But this allows me to go bishop to g6. So I kind of activate, I hit this pawn on e4, white plays f3, and now rook to g7. And here I'm turning bishop takes, I think I'm turning, yeah, I think I'm turning bishop takes e4 check here, because on knight e4 we can recapture with the knight. And rook g5, knight to g5, so we're winning some material. If white takes with the pawn, then rook takes g3 is hanging. So basically white has to defend the rook on g3. White played rook to g1, and now I went bishop h7, just kind of upping the tension. Maybe I should have done this one. This is what the engine was pointing out. Takes, and knight d3, followed by knight f4, and bringing the knight to just a very strong square. This I totally either missed or underestimated, because yeah, I think if I saw this, I would have likely wanted to go for this, because the knight on f4, queen on h4, basically the way black tries to win here is with the outside pass pawn. that's what the h pawn is here. And if I'm able to trade off some pieces, get into an endgame, my king is closer, this h pawn could become very, very dangerous. So that's kind of what I should have been striving for. I played bishop h7, just reinforcing the rook, and now bishop to f5. And here was a critical moment, move 38. I still have 17 minutes, so plenty of time to make the last couple of moves. I spent about 5 minutes here, and I played this move h4, which I thought was quite strong, because I thought I'm advancing on the king side. But this doesn't really work out the way I was hoping. So takes, rook takes, and here white doesn't take on g5. So this, of course, is what I wanted for white to trade on g5. I would take the queen, bishop takes h7, king takes h7, black is very active, and I can start like just running everything forward. If the queens come off, knight endgame, super, super dangerous for white with this outside pass pawn. So this I felt like is kind of a dream endgame for black and what I was striving for. But of course, white doesn't have to play that. Number one, actually, white could have played bishop to g4 and then kind of held the balance, and seems like black is not better here at all. But also in the game, white goes bishop takes h7, and now h4 is hanging with check. If I take with the king, the rook is also hanging, so I have to go rook takes g1, queen takes g1. I play king takes h7, and I still feel like black is doing well here, but after queen to g4, it's actually really hard to make progress because white's queen is very active. It's hard to dislodge the queen, and yeah, basically difficult to improve the position without allowing some counterplay. Like it's hard to maneuver my knight around to somewhere that's useful. So instead of h4, which just forces a lot of trades, I should have taken on f5, which I really didn't consider that much for some reason. ef, I was afraid of like knight e4, the knight coming in, but black can take on g3 and go queen f7. And then this f pawn is weak. Let's say white takes on g7, king takes, and queen h3, for example, then king h6. So the king starts coming in, queen can come to g7. Here, black would have much better chances. Basically, white just has an extra weakness in the position. So I was worried about like knight e4, but yeah, I guess it's like not the end of the world. I mean, this I don't think was the easiest thing to find, but probably I should have gone for this. Because white is just decidedly less active here with the pawn on f5. I mean, it looks a little scary like with f6, but at the same time, the queen isn't always able to get in, and now I'm also able to take the g file, which is kind of important. So if f6, let's say, queen g1 check, king to c2, knight takes e4, fe. We already have queen f2 check and pick up the pawn, and that's a very safe advantage for black. So yeah, I would definitely be happy to play that in game. So yeah, I should have taken on f5 or taken on g3 and then taken on f5. Basically leads to the same thing here. And then black would have had kind of decent winning chances. In the game, I definitely tried for quite a bit in this position, but ultimately I wasn't really able to make progress. So knight d3, I tried first kind of to bring the knight around to f4, but of course white plays knight e2, queen f6, a3, and here white just basically starts shuffling back and forth. And yeah, I couldn't find a clear way to make progress because if I go like queen g5, there's always queen e6 check. I'm forced to go back. White has queen e7, for example, and yeah, all my pawns are hanging, so black can still very much even lose this. If knight f2, then queen c8, and yeah, again, stuff is hanging. So I played b6, just trying to like improve my position to the maximum. White just shuffles back. Now knight e1, knight g1, defending the pawn, knight d3, knight e2. So I bring my knight back to c5. I try queen to g5 with the knight covering e6, but white has queen c8 hitting this one. So I come back, and now queen d8. And now white's getting a lot of counterplay. Gives check, another check, check here, check on g8, king here. And here white gives queen g4 check, king h6, and I kind of reset to what I had earlier where I still haven't made progress. But in the game, I was thinking white could even play knight to g1 at this moment. And now it's like even annoying for black because white has ideas like queen h7 check, king g5, knight h3 mates, for example, right? So here it's like I also have to be careful not to lose the game. So yeah, I was kind of relieved to kind of reset and keep trying. Now again, I come in with knight d3, knight e1. This time I try knight to c2 because earlier white's king was on b1, now it's on a2, so I get this extra option to try to bring the knight to d4 or to e3 as well, where I thought maybe it could be bothersome. But queen c8, once again, the queen comes in, and yeah, white just has enough counterplay. Knight h3, I went knight d4. And now white could play knight g1, just defend the pawn, and still holding on and doing fine. But instead, white goes knight f2, active. And at this point, we're both actually just playing on the increment, so it's past the second time control. I have 2 minutes, opponent has less than 1 minute, 30-second increment. And yeah, this was scary to see because now like knight g4 check, my king can run into some serious danger here. But I took the pawn, knight g4 check, and now king h5, very importantly. If king g5, then queen f5 would be mate. And if this one, then queen f5 check picks up the knight, and white's just winning. So king h5, very important, so I can meet queen f5 check with knight to g5. But now white has knight f6 check, knight g4, and is able to force a repetition as, yeah, I'm not able to get out. And yeah, white doesn't really have much to play for here, because if white gives black, a move or two, I can get h3, queen f7. If white doesn't have this perpetual, which, okay, maybe they're not risking so much, but yeah, of course, white is down a pawn, and if they blunder something and allow black to escape, then now they're down a pawn and could just lose the game. So knight f6 check, and yeah, we agreed on a draw because, of course, the repetition was just going to happen one way or another. So yeah, kind of a crazy game. I definitely felt like I missed some chances. It was never so easy, but yeah, I do feel like I maybe could have gotten a bigger edge than I did out of the middle game once things started kind of like turning around my way. Especially at this point, maybe takes, and knight to d3, bringing the knight to f4. I feel like this might have been very, very unpleasant for white. And of course, later taking on f5 and then going for this position. This seems like this would have been a better way to do things as well. Actually, in this line, I just noticed if queen f7, rook takes g7, we can take on f5 with check, and then take the rook. So this would have been, of course, much better here. Black is, I think, just winning extra pawn and doing really well. So yeah, takes, queen f7. This would have been actually the most direct way. So I was saying earlier, takes and takes on f5, ef, rook g3, yeah, queen f7 here in this position. And yeah, this would be the best way to do things. And our rook g7, I think I blundered that. Yeah, you can just take on f5. And then, yeah, that's just decisive for black. So this would have been, I think, maybe the clearest chance that I missed. But of course, I also could have gotten in huge trouble earlier after playing queen c8 in this position. This could have been a disaster after rook g7, bishop h6. So draw, maybe kind of a balanced results. I was a bit bummed not to win, but I was also happy not to lose a third game in a row with black. So I was kind of happy to like stop the bleeding and at least get some points on the board. So not the greatest result, but also not the worst one either. So my mood was kind of so, but I was happy, yeah, to at least get a half point out of my black game. And yeah, it felt like things were at least turning around in the right direction. Alrighty, thanks for watching this recap. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care.